Good morning, Drew. How are you doing today?
Not too, not too bad at all, sir. How you doing?
I'm doing well. Thank you for joining us this morning for this is our fourth Enercon webinar, believe it or not.
I do believe it. I've seen the other three.
Well, it's 10:01 according to my clock. So we want to welcome everybody to our webinar series hosted by Enercon Engineering's Integrated Defense Solutions Business Unit, or IDS for short. I'm your host, Sean Lott. I am the Director of Business Development for Enercon IDS. Like I mentioned earlier, this is our fourth webinar in our 2020 series. If you missed the first three, the importance of power integration solutions and how specific requirements impact cost and delivery, and EMI and tactical packaging, I put links to all three into the chat box. Before we get started, I just want to let you know that during the presentation, you can ask questions by clicking on the Q&A tab located on your Zoom toolbar. We will address all questions after the presentation concludes. As a reminder, this is also being streamed live on Facebook. So hi, Facebook audience at Enercon Engineering, and it's being recorded for on-demand viewing for you to watch or for you to share with your teammates at your leisure at a later date. So let's just get right to it. Now I'd like to introduce today's presenter, Drew Donath. Drew has over 13 years of manufacturing experience, and he has spent the last 7 years in the quality department here at Enercon working on the prime power unit in support of Raytheon's THAAD radar contract with the Missile Defense Agency. Drew is a member of the American Society for Quality and holds certifications as the CQIA, the CQI, the CQT, and the CQE. So without further ado, let's just jump right in it. Drew, over to you.
All right. Well, thank you, Sean. My name's Drew Donath, and welcome to the fourth installment of Enercon Engineering's webinar series entitled Making Your Case, Proving Conformance Through the FAI Process. It's a catchy title, but it also describes how I like to think about the FAI process. I like to put myself in the position of a lawyer or a detective who's building a case based on the objective evidence to prove that a part's been built in conformance with the drawing or the assembly that it is a part of. Now, this is done through the FAI report. We're going to be specifically talking about the FAI report done to the AS 9102 Rev B standard. For your sake, I'm going to try to keep it brief, and we're going to take a look at the FAI process from a 35,000-foot view. With that said, let's start with the most basic question. What is an FAI? Well, an FAI, or a first article inspection, is a verification report that's assembled using objective evidence and documentation to validate the conformance of a part to the design drawing. This includes all design characteristics and processes used to complete that part or assembly. Now, this definition sounds easy enough, but the reality is that a good FAI report can be quite a task. Many times it must capture not just a single piece part, but an entire group of parts that must all be accounted for in the completed assembly. Now, more complex assemblies can require extensive time, tooling, and documentation to complete, sometimes numbering in the hundreds of pages. Through the first article process, larger, more costly nonconformances can be discovered and identified before assembly, which can minimize the impact to the production schedule due to nonconformances, which leads to reduced costs overall. The vital few, if you will. Many times during the performance of first articles, other continuous improvements can be made, which include more clear drawings, which can act as a redundancy to the design review, incorrect references to outdated standards or NHAs, or possibly problems within the supply chain. Now, that makes us jump to, why do we do FAIs? Well, the first thing that we do FAIs for is because it can provide confidence that product realization processes are capable of producing conforming product. If your supplier does not have the capable processes, then how can they produce conforming material? This is why I would encourage auditing and regular facility visits with your most prominent sub-tier suppliers. It helps to promote continuous improvement on both ends, and a familiarity with the processes of your sub-tier suppliers can actually lead to a better understanding of your own project. Secondly, it can demonstrate that the manufacturers and the processors of the product have an understanding of the associated requirements and the process capability to achieve conformance. Communication with the sub-tier suppliers is vital to performing first article inspections. They're the tip of the spear in controlling good quality product. Expectations of what kind of documentation is necessary to support the first article and an understanding of the standards and requirements that are set forth on the drawing are the basis for producing conforming product. First articles can also reduce the potential risks that are involved with production startup and process changes while reducing future escapes and total costs. Designs may change, drawings are updated, processes change, and the first article inspection should capture all these changes and updates so it can always be known that the parts received are conforming and that these changes are accounted for with objective evidence, providing customer assurance that any changes or modifications requested are actually captured in the final product. Risks can be mitigated through the use of design tooling such as check fixtures, CMMs, and other product-specific tooling. FAI can be a huge aid in the pursuit of continuous improvement. FAIs also provide assurance of product conformance through the production process, including any design changes. Now, we just kind of talked about this during the last point, but despite their best efforts and what they may tell you, engineers aren't perfect, and they do occasionally make mistakes, except maybe Evan Rua. Sometimes unanticipated interference can occur, or different attributes are necessary, or another process needs to be added to a part. These should all spur an upref to the current drawing, which will then need to be verified and captured in a first article. Lastly, they can improve quality, delivery, and customer satisfaction through corrective action and reducing production delays associated with nonconformance. If our customer knows that our FAI process is effective and it supplies assurance that the product they are ordering is going to meet their expectations and hopefully exceed them, this can encourage a relationship of trust and create increased opportunities for future revenue for both their company as well as ours. Reducing the cost of nonconformances goes straight to the bottom line of profit for any project, and that's a result we can all be happy with. So, how do we achieve the best results for FAI during the product realization process? Well, clear quality expectation flow down to sub-tier suppliers of all the quality notes. Suppliers should have no question about the expected documentation and the quality notes pertaining to the PO when it is accepted. If the expectations are unknown, then how will we get the documentation that is necessary for passing the FAI? We should always strive to build relationships with our sub-tier suppliers. Have contacts within the quality groups of your most important suppliers, people you can directly talk to that speak the quality language so that you can be provided with any information necessary during the completion or the acceptance of an FAI. To the second bullet point, a training program should exist that is dedicated to the understanding of a well-executed FAI and the expectations of what the customer desires to be captured in the reports. A strong training program is necessary to the process, and it should be taking place so that any inconsistencies can be corrected and teammates coached along the way. An FAI done improperly can waste time and resources, not just for your team, but for third-party auditors or inspectors. Our customer reviews and signs off on our first article reports, and that report should be filled out completely with all documentation that's necessary on hand and ready in the packet for review so their time's not wasted. Failure to do this can increase costs across the board and begin to erode trust that can be hard to build back with your customer. My third point is that a plan for completion of FAI activities related to the first production runs and changes during the manufacturing process is necessary. If you fail to plan, you plan to fail. FAI should be continuously completed when they are necessary. Updated records should always be retained. There should always be a flow down from engineering every time a drawing uprevs so the quality department is aware that requirements for that part may have changed. Inventory should be looked at in the case that the part becomes obsolete or is not conforming to the latest revision. In the case of a new project, the quality department should be a part of the preliminary discussion so that an idea of how many FAIs need to be completed and a timeline of how long it may take can be estimated. FAIs can incur large costs depending on the amount of information involved in assembling the proper FAI. Lastly, there should be an internal FAI review process. Many of us in the quality field realize that two sets of eyes are usually better than one. Many times another inspector may see what we aren't looking at and provide better feedback on an inspection. This is also true with FAI. They should be reviewed internally before they are sent to the customer. This should be a part of your FAI training process. Nobody jumps on a bike as a child and starts riding it. Training wheels are part of the process. Review of FAI is much the same. New inspectors or inspectors new to the process have built-in learning opportunities during the construction of the FAI. Use this internal review process to grow your team's knowledge and build the standardization approach that makes performing first articles easy. Now, when do we do FAI? Well, any first production run, this generally excludes any type of prototype building that was done to achieve realization. The emphasis for FAI is the production run of parts that lead to the first assembly of a finished product for the customer. Hence, prototypes are usually not a part of the first article process. When changes occur that invalidate the original results of our FAI, these could include engineering changes, manufacturing process changes, tooling changes, locational changes, and manufacturing changes. This is why the quality department needs to be in the loop from engineering so that they know whatever changes are going to happen and what to expect. The quality manager should know all instances that could impact the need to perform a first article inspection. We also have to perform them after a lapse in production greater than 2 years. It's pretty self-explanatory. If the part's been out of production for longer than 2 years, another FAI will be required for validation of the part. This can be a particular challenge when dealing with complex assemblies on contracts that may spend years between ordering the same parts, which is what we do here at Enercon Engineering. Also, an implementation of corrective action required to complete a previous FAI deemed non-conforming. Well, first articles cannot be signed off on as complete if there are open non-conformances against the part because it's not conforming. The first article can be completed, but corrective action must be documented to demonstrate the compliance of the part after the corrective action has been taken. Now, possible pitfalls that I have seen within FAIs in my experiences: incomplete design characteristics that aren't measurable in the final product are not verifiable by the customer, the next customer in the supply chain. Well, many times smaller parts are assembled and processed into more complex assemblies before they ever arrive at your facility. Say, for instance, two-piece parts are welded together to make a small assembly. Well, after that process occurs, some aspects of those parts are no longer measurable, which then requires data from the sub-tier supplier demonstrating those parts were measured and verified to be in compliance before they underwent the process of welding, which can impact some of those stated dimensions. Many times inferences can be made, but only true data can be gathered before the part undergoes processing. This is why sub-tier suppliers need to understand that we depend on them for this data to be validated in order to be used in the first article inspection. I can't stress enough the need for clear communication of quality expectations and building relationships with your suppliers. I've also seen a misunderstanding of the objective evidence to be included in the FAI report. You have to know the expectations of your customer. If you don't know what they want in the report, how do you satisfy them? You should work with your customer's quality representative to make sure that you are completely clear on their expectations. Know your customer. This goes for any business, no matter whether you're making sandwiches or missile defense batteries. Another possible pitfall is that incorrect special processors could be used in the realization of the final product. Many customers have certified suppliers of special processes that they want used. They have been validated by the end customer to provide the services, and if we find a supplier that has used an unapproved source, that can demonstrate a major breakdown and lead to some of the worst kinds of non-conformances if they're not caught early in the manufacturing process. Entire assemblies may have to be taken apart due to something like this happening. First article can help to nullify this from happening because the proof is always in the paperwork. Incomplete determination of proper tooling, designed or qualified, that are identified, qualified, and traceable to a standard. Know what kind of tooling is needed for verification of the first articles and buy whatever is needed to validate the results. I would recommend using the rule of tens when judging what is needed. If design tooling can reduce nonconformances and increase the speed of product acceptance, then do some cost calculations to determine if creating those design tools is worth it to your project. Also, I've seen assembly FAI that do not include the sub-assembly information. While some FAIs are simple piece parts that can be completed in 15 minutes or a half hour, a great many are highly complex, made up of dozens, if not hundreds of fabricated parts at the assembly's highest level. Every one of those parts and assemblies require their own validation to be referenced on Form 1. This means many assemblies will have to be broken down to their most simple forms and then layered together within a report. An FAI on a complex final assembly will have to account for the smallest individual part all the way to complete systems, which all combine to form the final assembly. It's the quality department that will have to figure out the best way to peel the onion, so to speak. There are multiple ways to handle FAIs. Many times it is up to the quality personnel to see how they want to break them down. I've also seen occasions where not all the materials or processes included in the conformity of the part are placed on Form 2 of the FAI. This can go hand in hand with the previous item I mentioned. Know what your special processes are, and if encompassing several drawings into an FAI, all special processes used on the higher level assembly as well as those used on the lower level assembly need to be called out and referenced with supporting documentation on Form 2 of the FAI. Sometimes documents referenced by FAI are not included in the report. You can't make your case for conformance if you don't have supporting documentation. Sure, you can watch a special process occur and you can know it happened, but if there isn't documentation, you can't prove it. If Denzel Washington taught us anything in Trading Day, it's not what you know, it's what you can prove. The lack of understanding of customer expectations on FAI completion. There's honestly no reason for this to happen. This needs to be clearly understood by the quality department, and this information needs to be flowed to all sub-tier suppliers in the process. I can't stress enough, you have to know your customers' expectations. So, in closing, we've taken a really brief look at the FAI process. We've talked about what they are, why we do them, how we do them, and some of the possible problems that can come about during their construction. Most of filling out the actual form is very basic and can be pulled from a read or two through the standard. FAI may not provide easily measurable metrics overall, but they can produce incredible results with the lowering of total nonconformances, lowering the cost of those nonconformances that do happen, and the time that a well-executed FAI can save with regards to the production schedule. All these things mean one thing: better overall profit margins, which in the end is the goal for any organization. They give increased confidence to our customers that they're going to get the product they need, when they need it, and how they need it. It also builds our relationships with our sub-tier suppliers and gives us a better understanding of their processes, which can lead to a better understanding of our own project. Don't discount the benefits of a well-performed FAI report. With that, I'm going to return it to our Director of Business Development, Sean Lott, who will open things up to any questions.
All right, thank you, Drew. Lots of information to unpack there, and we definitely know why you're the quality expert for Enercon engineering, that's for sure. So we do have time now, so don't be bashful about your questions. There's a Q&A tab again on the Zoom bar, so if you have a question, just click it, ask your question. All questions are submitted anonymously, so nobody knows that you typed the question, so don't worry about asking any simplistic or any quote-unquote dumb questions. All questions will be answered, and there's no such thing as a dumb question. So with that, talking about profitability, the first question that right off the top deals with the cost. So one of the viewers wants to know what kind of costs are associated or entailed with the FAI process, Drew?
They're free. No. The costs that can be entailed with the FAI process, like I said earlier, they can be actually pretty costly. You have to take in the factors of how much time is it going to take the personnel to perform the FAI. There's the cost of making sure that your employees are trained in the proper way to perform them. All parts are different. If the part's highly complex, made up of a lot of different sub-assemblies, that can add costs to it. The documentation and the reports that are associated with FAIs are sometimes an extra charge from suppliers. CFCs, test reports, any kind of batch control or material information, a lot of those can spur on extra charges and actually increase the cost of FAIs. But for the nonconformances that it can capture before the manufacturing process, you have to weigh whether or not it's worth that to your organization.
Okay. So you mentioned a couple of documents that are required. Are there more documentations that's required outside of CSVs and test reports?
Oh, yeah. I mean, a lot of that is dependent on your customer, what they want to consider their special processes. But a lot of the documentation that goes into our FAIs are weld certifications, because I am certainly no weld expert. I know a bad one when I see it, but I can't tell you the ins and outs of the process. Most of those are looked at by a certified weld inspector. There's classic certificate of conformances, paint routers, or any other kind of surface finishing that occurs. Material cert, so you know that the product was made with the correct material that's associated with the drawing. There's occasions where a customer may not want you to use, say, Chinese steel seems to be a popular thing. So you want to make sure that you have any kind of documented information that that is not made from Chinese steel. Test reports that might be associated with the drawing, if it's connectivity or any kind of point-to-point inspection, material information, destructive testing, anything that is basically demanded by your customer. As I said, know your customer and give them everything that they need.
Okay. And our next question here is, a viewer wants to know what is the value added by doing the FAI? I know you touched on it a little bit during your presentation, but can you kind of highlight some of the added values of FAI during the process?
Yeah, as I said, it can be really hard to measure metrically, and I know in business a lot of times we're concerned with the numbers and the metrics of everything. Is it measurable? Well, not exactly. You can see a reduction in the number of nonconformances that you actually receive, which is always a good thing. A reduced impact to the production schedule from nonconformances, that's my biggest thing. I feel that if you catch something early in the manufacturing process and save sometimes weeks from an impact on a production schedule simply by going through the paperwork and doing a proper search through all your documentation, that you can actually eliminate some of those nonconformances and help out your schedule, which your project managers usually love. You can increase quality overall through better drawings and understanding of the processes, like I talked about earlier. Can actually shed light on your own program. It's validation of your suppliers. You always want to be looking at what they're doing because you want to buy the best product possible for your project. And you build relationships with your customers as well as your suppliers. This business can be a lot about building those relationships. In an era where we can buy the cheapest thing off Amazon or whatever website we're visiting, there's something to be said for a relationship with a face and somebody that you know that you can do business with and get the answers that you need when it comes to the product. There's a lot of different value added processes within the FAI that really are not measurable, but I highly encourage any organization, especially that deals with military applications, that the FAI is an intricate part of their quality program.
Excellent. Excellent. Well, that was the last question. I'll wait 30 more seconds to see if there's anybody else that has any more questions. But while we were doing that, I mentioned at the top of the webinar here that the links for the previous webinars would be in the chat box, and I neglected to hit the enter key. So I just did that. So now you have all the links to the previous webinar. Again, this is being streamed live on Facebook, so you can always visit our Facebook page at Enercon Engineering, and you can go through there and search and find the webinars there as well. And you can also visit our YouTube page. Just search for Enercon Engineering, and you'll find our YouTube page, and there's not only webinar videos, but just a whole list of library of videos there that are posted. That explains more about Enercon and Enercon's capabilities and what we've been doing over our rich 45th year history and existence. Speaking of 45 years of history, our anniversary is coming up on September 2nd. So I just want to put a plug in. for us, as far as our anniversary, we're going to do a ribbon cutting at our main facility in Peoria, Illinois, at our manufacturing facility on the September 2nd at 1 o'clock. And that will also be streamed live on Facebook as well. So you all are virtually invited to attend that and hear some remarks by our president and our CEO about Enercon and how happy we are to be in business for 45 years. So with that, I do not see any more questions flowing in for you, Drew. So
That's a really big disappointment. I love FAI questions, to tell you the truth.
well, I think as you presented a lot of information to digest, and you covered it very thoroughly. So, sometimes not having a lot more questions is a good thing. So we just want to thank you for your time. Thank you for contributing to everybody's knowledge and learning about the FAI process and how to conform to it, and how we can establish better relationships with our customers and our suppliers by going through the quality that's expected of us when we are coming up and manufacturing and we're testing the equipment that we're trying to provide to our customers.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Sean.
All right. With that said, again, as I mentioned earlier, that this is one part of a series of webinars. So this is number 4. We got number 5 coming up. So our next free webinar will be on power systems is our next webinar. So I want to thank you all for tuning in, and I want you guys to have a great week, and we'll see you soon. Thank you.